Today we're making the world's simplest cocktail from just 2 ingredients, and both of them are bourbon from the same distillery. Hello and welcome back to the channel, and yes, today I'm going to be blending Wild Turkey's 101 with Wild Turkey's Rare Breed because someone in the comments told me to do it. In a video, I compared these two bourbons together, and I basically said before trying them that I thought they were pretty similar, just the Rare Breed being a big, bolder version of Wild Turkey's 101. I then tried them and realised actually I was wrong, and I think both are delicious, but more different than you might think. Someone in the comments of that video said the following: try a blend 2/3 Wild Turkey 101, 1/3 Rare Breed 116.8, which is the proof on this one. See if you like it. Bit of an odd thing to suggest, but well, I'm all up for trying a few odd things. So, what's this going to be like? Well, it's probably going to be a little bit between the two of them. That's no surprise. Is this really a cocktail? Well, it's mixing two drinks, so yes. Is it still a whiskey though, because it's mixing two whiskies? Yes, you could call it American whiskey. If the liquids in these bottles happen to be made around the same time in the same distillery, they definitely were from the same distillery, but were they at the same time? If they were at the same time, well, you could still call it bourbon. The only difference being we blended it after it went into the bottles rather than before. So whatever whiskey we end up calling this, it doesn't really matter. It still could be something legitimate that Wild Turkey could create as a proper bourbon. So let's get to it. I will of course just be using a Glencairn because we're tasting this properly. We want to know how it does, and I'm going to be mixing on the small side of this, which is 15 ml to the line inside. So 2 of those, 1 of those. Let's see how it is. Okay, in terms of pour, not a great deal of difference. I will say that the bottle on the Rare Breed is just better for pouring from kind of carefully. It's got a thinner aperture, and as a result, yeah, just is easier to control, but you're not really doing that with most pours, let's be honest. In the glass, it looks like Wild Turkey bourbon, which in turn looks, well, like quite a lot of other proper bourbon, because it is. So there's no great surprise there. I'm going to just let this mix around in the glass just for a little bit longer, let it open up, and then we'll get to some proper testing.
A few minutes later.
Okay, I've let this kind of just sit there in the glass, infuse, let the spirits get to know one another, let them mix around for a little while now anyway, and we should hopefully have something worth testing. So, aroma time. Okay, nice, big, it's rich, but it's not over the top. Feels distinctly more full-bodied than the regular 101. Definitely hasn't got the heft of the Rare Breed. A little bit ethanol forward on the nose. What it has got though is a load of those big, rich, leathery tannin notes that you get oodles of in the Rare Breed, but you don't get so much of in the 101. And it's a thing I'm a big fan of. So if they've come through in any great number, that is going to be fantastic, because it means you're getting that experience, but well, you're only having to use 1/3 of the bottle of the more expensive 101. The other thing I'm looking for in the flavour is, has it got that slightly savoury umami peanut dust kind of thing going on that's just, yeah, a little bit peanut brittly, but ultimately just very satisfying. That will be interesting to see. Otherwise, on the aroma though, like either of these otherwise, obviously it's got the leather from the Rare Breed, it's got the vanilla, but it's a little bit dialed back. It's not super sweet. It's a touch peppery in places, a touch medicinal kind of, you know, it's the ethanol really, but it's got this slight rubbing alcohol cleansing vibe to it. Yeah, I'm sure I've said this about one or both of these bottles in the past, so no surprise there. But yes, smells pretty good indeed. So let's get into it. Cheers. Oh, hello. Now, I've not decided after one sip that this is better than either of them on their own, of course. But what I have decided after one sip is that this is a product worth making. Obviously, it makes sense. These are very similarly related bourbons. As a result, the fact that they go well together, probably not a big surprise. But normally, despite my preconceptions before trying them head to head, there is actually a really big gap between these two in terms of, just the ability to appreciate if you're not used to big, heavy bourbon. The rare breed, if you're not used to it, will not feel like a benefit to you. You really have to work your way up to this kind of strength. And yes, whilst this is inevitably a decent bit stronger than the 101, which is already not your flat regular 40-80, it is just not as difficult or not as unapproachable as rare breed might be to some people starting out on their whiskey journey. But enough of that. What does it actually taste like? Well, tip of the tongue, it's actually alarmingly soft, a few little vanilla notes, but the overwhelming sensation there is like a cola cube. It's fizzy, the vanilla as well, obviously we're getting this kind of Coca-Cola float territory, but really it is that kind of slightly sweet but just a bit fizzy almost. It's not obviously carbonated, but the intensity, the prickly nature of a high strength spirit can on your tongue mimic carbonation, fizz, from time to time, especially when it's just on the tip of your tongue, you're not really getting the full flavour of it. And it is definitely going down that Coca-Cola, cola cubes kind of thing. Mid palate, we're moving more into rich cowboy bourbon. Sanded floors, it's got that bit of leather tannin, it's got the richness, the oaks coming through. It still remains peppered with sweetness, and actually not much pepper, incidentally. But it's becoming a bit more rich, a bit more mature. It's leaving away the vanilla and sweet shop vibes. We're going into something a bit more rich, a bit more mature. And then, back of the tongue. Big, it's hot, more leather tannins, really quite fiery. It's not smoky, but it's got real just punch, and it lifts that. It's kind of, it's rubbing alcohol, it's just cleansing. I want to say like eucalyptus, but it's not that fresh. It's just raw cleansing material. And I do think there's something else just mingling in with that, but it's so potent on the other bits, I'm really not picking it up. Then, on the aftertaste, leather kicks back, the tiniest fragment of that, well, I said it before, what I was hoping for, that slightly savoury, umami, peanutty vibe. And it's not there in the amounts that I would want, but inevitably in any whiskey, when I find it, I always want a little bit more. But this is very mellow on that front. It is there, but only just. A couple of nice caramel licks to finish there, but otherwise pretty one-dimensional on the back end. That's interesting. It's a real journey. Starts off very soft, sweet, approachable. We move on, more adult flavours, more refined, if you like. Then we get into real, slightly aggressive cowboy bourbon, and then it just kind of washes away again. Now, the way I see this going is if you don't really fancy drinking rare breed at its full proof or similar things at their full proof, and you don't want to water it down, totally understandable. And yeah, you would lose something from it, and sometimes actually adding water makes it hotter rather than cools it down, weirdly. But yeah, I get it. It is pokey. But mixing the two feels like you get, well, annoyingly, it's about a third of the character of rare breed. Of course, it's a third of this mix, so that's not a surprise, but it doesn't water down the rest of it, if that makes any sense. You're just kind of compacting it with some slightly sweeter flavours out of the 101, and yeah, it is a very nice mix indeed. If that was for sale, it became a product to stick aside these two, I dare say I might buy one. But in saying that, the thing about these two bottles is, if I don't want to drink a whiskey that's a bit pricey to replace, I'm going to drink the 101 because it's still very, very good. In fact, it's impossibly good for its price. And if I want something bigger, richer, proper, well, I'm going to crack open the rare breed. Not very often do I actually want something in the middle because, well, it's a little bit expensive to replace, but it doesn't feel all that nice either. But I'm a complete hypocrite because what I often go for is Eagle Rare, and here in the UK, well, it sits perfectly price-wise between these two, so maybe I just don't know what I'm talking about. Very likely, in fact. But anyway, that is my thoughts on it. In general, though, if someone makes you a recommendation in your comments, I was about to say do it, don't, because that will be some ridiculous recommendations to throw up, but you get the idea. Sometimes it's worth trying something you're not sure about, just to see how you feel about it, and yeah, that one, well, I've definitely seen worse ideas this week, let's put it that way. And to be honest with you, that is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.